is Remote Daily, your daily dose of inspiration. This is Remote Daily, an oasis of innovation for your mind, your soul, your heart. Connect, act, recharge with Remote Daily. This is Remote Daily.
Live, unfiltered, and Leonard Dario, just wow. Thank you. And welcome our guest today, rapper, hip-hop artist, Force of Nature, live from Brooklyn. Kosha Dillz is in the house. Hi, Kosha. Great to have you on the show.
And what's going on?
Hey.
How are you?
Welcome back. How's your mic now? Is it a little bit, did you fix the cable?
Yeah, I mean, could you hear me good? Is everything
Yeah, you sound
good?
perfect.
Perfect. I don't want to touch it. It's one of those things, you know?
Yeah. And to our crew who's joining us, to our community here who's joining us from Alaska to Europe, Kosha is actually not a stranger to this community. For a few people had the chance to meet Kosha live, and I'm just going to share some of the pictures here. A few days ago, we did our first ever walking tour with members of Remote Daily, and Kosha was there. He got, to Washington Square Park for us, and he just was amazing. He had his little suitcase and of course, his skills with him of a very, very experienced life of freestyling and performing outdoors with the police lingering around us, but we had these headphones on, so they couldn't stop us. Kosha, please take us to Washington Square Park again. How was it for you to perform outside in this special time and day?
I really love this picture with the guy looking behind me. So it's just amazing. I'm like, that guy on the right, yeah, just perfect guy. It was really awesome because, I'm just like thinking of one performing, and oh my god, I love this picture. It just makes me so happy. I'm like, why don't I have these pictures? But I guess they're for today. Performing in the park on the street it's very liberating. I mean, if you're an artist or if you're somebody that has to be on the computer and consistently emailing and consistently calling and texting and WhatsApping and Facebooking and other sorts of forms of communication, this is sort of like going to the workout, to the gym, and you're like, I don't really care if someone emailed me about anything right now. This is what I'm doing. I'm lifting these dumbbells. I am, doing these pull-ups. I'm doing these sit-ups. And sort of that's what sort of happens. What this specific time sped off was that I met Felix in South by Southwest on the east side of Austin at some venue, and had his phone number while he was writing for, I think, Red Bull Germany. And what I thought to myself was, okay, this is a great time to stay in touch with someone. And now that my album dropped, I was reaching out to people, and because the album's called Nobody Cares Except You, I wanted to just reach out to people that I hadn't talked to in a while and just say, hey, just to reconnect. And this happened days before, and I decided that I wanted to raise money for charities. And this was sort of the event that really spiked the donations. I ended up raising $1,000 in a week performing on the street. Wow. Half of it was made at the Remote Daily event. The other half was made at other places. But I think that shows faith in like what you do, is that I was going to go out there and you just kind of make the efforts, and it's a very faith-based performance lifestyle that you're going to go show up and you're going to knock on doors in your door-to-door sales life. And if you knock on enough doors, enough people will open them, and that's sort of the message and experience that you have when you're on the street, is that I think what hard work, people would say what I do is hard work. I think real hard work are the people selling the tours on, Times Square and Hollywood Boulevard and just getting
Right.
notes all the time. And, there's 200 people there, but maybe three people give, but three people give enough, maybe because they were affected so much, they give enough of what 200 people would give.
And I wanna just highlight your newsletter for a moment, your
Thanks.
most recent one. I highly recommend subscribing to it. It's a great newsletter, and Sammy's going to share some links in the chat from Kosha Dillz that you all can follow. You just performed at the voting polls, so please share with us how did that go? Madison Square Garden and Brooklyn Museum, I think you performed at.
I never made it to Brooklyn Museum, unfortunately, because I was in MSG and then we went to Times Square instead, which actually really worked out to my benefit. There's something my publicist had told me about called Joy to the Polls, and they were doing these pull-up performances with people that were, like Busta Rhymes did it. Just a lot of bands were going out into Philly, New York, and they would come up with these sort of like party buses to entertain people by the polls. A lot of people were poll workers. Some people were, obviously the lines weren't as long on voting day, right? Because so many people were voting before. So I sort of did a renegade Joy to the Polls, and I went to MSG. There were no lines, but there was a lot of video cameras. And then I went over into Times Square, very similar, and just sort of just entertaining the people that, for voting day, which I think is a really stressful day for people. And it's sort of not just because it weighs on who they are choosing, but also because it weighs on everybody else. So, everyone's sort of elevating it in television. And my mom worked at the polls. She's so cute. There she is.
That's amazing. What did she do?
She just worked. She was in New Jersey. She was just, collecting the votes, in Manasquan. It's a small town in New Jersey, maybe 7,000 people. A small little beach town. And there wasn't that many people because so many people voted in advance, When people vote in advance, there's not a lot of people showing up. And because of coronavirus, that's how it was,
I see. And you care a lot about voting because you, I think, weren't able to vote until 2012. What happened?
So I was convicted, maybe it was 2002, my first time. So I was convicted of my first felonies that year. And then, you're on parole and you're on probation. And at that time, I do not think we were allowed to vote. And if we were allowed to vote, I didn't know. And it was the basic assumption that people weren't allowed to vote. And what a lot of people don't understand is that in incarcerated communities, no one's like, I can't wait to vote. If it was a cool thing to do, that's it. But most people don't want to even know where they live because after jail, you get a bill sent to you anyway. And of course, everyone in jail doesn't pay the bills. And I had, when you're on probation, parole, now it's different. But I think just in 2019, the laws changed in New Jersey, especially in California as well, where I was living. So, up till 2008, 2009, I think is when I got off of probation. And then I voted in the 2012 election. So, yeah, I wasn't able to vote for a long time. And as much as that part is removed from my life, the reality is I wasn't allowed to vote. You know what I'm saying? And other people are allowed to vote. And if you think about it, you don't really value the rights that you have when they're taken away. And, people don't think that they could just be taken away. And they're like, well, actually, you're not allowed to vote. And reality is, it just shows like a caste system of like, because you make less money, because you've committed criminal acts, or because you did, committed crimes or drug activities, which is not your fault that you did drugs or whatever you were doing, which was in my situation, there were drug charges and drug convictions. I'm treated completely differently than other people who didn't get caught. Or also maybe more, so you're cast in a certain way. And a lot of people have different feelings about that, but people, just a general vibe is that no one's like, hey, I can't wait to tell you where I live and tell you my information and tell you my government, because it's just the way of jail lifestyle and prison lifestyle is that you don't need to know anything. You don't need to, Felix doesn't need to know where I live. Felix doesn't know where I need to register here and there so they know where I am. So it is really important for me to vote no matter what, just because I'm somebody that's able to. I wasn't able to.
Right. And you see maybe the comments in the chat here. Of course, it's different in some states to other states. Sarah is saying she's proud of her adopted state of Illinois, where felons can vote once they've served. How do you you think and you talk a lot about that? How do you think about the relationship between convictions and voting today?
The relation between convictions and voting today.
Yeah.
In what manner do you mean? Like, I don't know if you can
Do
rephrase
you
the
see
question.
things changing? Are there any initiatives that we might be able to support? Is there anything out there where you're maybe involved with that can lead to a different future?
Well, I think the laws are mostly changed, to be honest. The fact is that voting has become more popular. There's been more people voting this year than any other year because it's become cooler to vote. Even if you don't know who you're voting for, because everyone's posting that they have the voter sticker. Even if you post that I voted on your Instagram story, your stories are getting more views because people are searching out who's voting. So, you know, specifically in like the Jewish community, people are more used to voting. But maybe in black community, maybe people weren't as much voting. I have friends that still aren't voting. Like, I'm not into voting. I'm not going to push you to vote, but I know a lot of people that were voting for the first time. I know people that were dressing up. They're making content. They're doing TikToks. They're making Instagram reels. Voting is cool. You know, voting in this election is cool. Maybe not who you vote for. So I think like as long as we advance in our technology and society and celebrate like the freedom of choice, you know, and the freedom of like basic rights, and I know, honestly, I know a lot about voting just because on my birthday, August 26th, 1920 women were given the right to vote, well, white women, and then later on, everyone was given the right to vote. So, like, that's my perspective. I mean, I could be really underinformed, but at least from my own experience is that voting has never been cooler. So I think as long as we keep stuff cool in a society and celebrate the cool things that like a big deal. It's just voting to some people. It's not just voting for some people. I didn't vote in the 2016 election. I was in Israel and I couldn't. It's okay. I'm from California. It doesn't matter because if everyone, you know, no matter who I vote for, it's always a blue state or, you know what I'm saying? Certain states are always red. But, you know, just because, you know, oh, I always show up to work. My boss always shows up to work late. Doesn't mean that's a right thing or a wrong thing. I mean, you should still show up to work on time, or you know what I'm saying? It's like, and it's still exercise that right. So this year, you know, I mailed in my ballot, I tracked it, and it makes me feel good about myself because, like I said, like not everyone even has that privilege. In some countries, people vote for somebody, and no matter what, the person's still the same leader, you know, and there's not even a majority of the world supporting that, you know.
Right. Is there? I would love to talk about your music. It's
Yes.
I am not a hip hop expert in any regard, and I used to work as a music journalist, mainly focusing on non-Western music. But it still strikes me to this day that you're rapping in so many languages, and among them Hebrew and also Yiddish. How common is that? Are there any other artists out there? And how did you land there in the first place?
Um, I just wanna put the link. I think if for the Spanish Hebrew song, just so you guys can check it out, and the other song that I'm gonna put in the chat later, schmoozing. Um, I'm a champion of doing things that are different. Before I was Kosha Dillz, I was KD Flow. And funny, this started off when I was incarcerated. Everyone was going to see a priest. And somehow you could get out of this pod because you could go see like a priest or you know, it was like a pastor and they were going to go do a Bible study. And I said, oh, that's like racial discrimination. I was like, you guys got to see it. Where's the rabbi? And I never saw a rabbi, but I like demanded one so I could just get out. And I refused to work because they were like giving you like $1 a day. And I was like, I'm not going to work for $1 a day. It's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But people would work for $1 a day to get out of whatever their situation is. So I, when I came out of jail, went from KD Flow to Kosha Dillz, and I kind of changed it. So a big part of my album releases, and this is like my 5th project, Every project always has something that like reminds people that I'm Jewish. And on this specific project, the Jewish song was Span Hebrish, which was the Spanish Hebrew English song on my album Gina and the Garage Sale. And I had always wanted to do something. The producer was from Germany. His name Shuko, really successful guy. And I started just writing the song. I put some Spanish in here. And I'm like, I just really like this. And the song had become a real big party song and a great live song. I figured out how to do it, and it was like an educational song. And you know, I took Spanish from 7th grade. I was just at the bagel shop speaking Spanish to this guy Joel, and then you come back, I speak to my parents in Hebrew, and it's just sort of my daily life. So I really loved, I wanted to make a song like this, even if no one understood it. And my main source of inspiration was to be original. I'm like, no one's gonna do this ever. And I performed that same thing in the BET Awards. I wanted to be the first guy rapping in Hebrew at the BET Awards, and I took part of that song and put it in my cipher. And then I went on with this song to shoot a music video for it, and we shot it at Sundance. We got a celebrity in it. We shot it in LA. There was a place called Mexikosher in the music video that was a real restaurant that was kosher Mexican food in Pico, in the kosher neighborhood of Pico, of West Pico and West LA. Pico Robertson, it's the area specifically. So that song became, Zionist Yoga on Awkward in a Good Way. What I Do All Day in Pickle had a song with Modest Yahoo called Dodging Bullets. And then on my new project, 2020, I have Schmoozing, which is the Yiddish song. And that song also came out of, the producer was really into Hasidic culture and these guys that dance in Israel. They stop a street and they dance, and their leader, who has passed away, Rebbe Nachman, is a guy that believes that happiness is the cure to like everything. So it's like whole philosophy is based on happiness. And he's like, how do we get them to play our song? And they drive around all around the country, and they just stop in the middle of the highway and they start dance parties. And then they just drive off into like, who knows, into their own little world. Yeah, and they come from this spiritual city in the north called Tzfat. It's a really ancient city. They don't all come from there, but many of them live there. It's really cheap and really awesome area. And he's like, how do we get them to play Schmoozing? Like, we need to make this song. So we started taking klezmer samples and old violins, and we put this Yiddish thing together. I recorded it, met the guy from Modest Yahoo, went to Israel, added some more Yiddish, re-recorded it, shot the video there, and voila. So every piece
Yvonne,
reminder.
Yvonne calls it an Orthodox flash mob here in the chat.
Yes, yeah. It's an Orthodox flash mob, yes.
That's the hashtag here.
Yeah.
I am so inspired by you, Kosha, and we have the chance. We will maybe put you on the spot after the breakouts. You have agreed to
I can't wait.
show us your freestyle skills, and we will do that by giving you words and inspiration in the chat. So this will be a brand new experiment on Remote Daily. I hope you all are ready for it. After the breakouts, we will hear Kosha perform. But before that, Kosha, please share one more thing with us, which is I have admired so much how you just got through this year. And of course, on behalf of so many artists in your world, the world of hip hop, the world of urban art, how did you get through this year, and how are your peers currently surviving? Like what is the resilience that you have discovered that, and the artistry that helps you get through, and your peers to get through 2020?
Yes, because the topic is resilience. And so when I came to the US from Israel in March, I got a phone call literally going to the airport that I would have the biggest song on Spotify ever. And it's a really funny story because I didn't know I even made the song. And I only said 8 words in the song, and I thought I recorded it at my friend's house, and it was like a demo, and it ended up being a song with this guy named Cascade, who's a massive EDM producer. So if you look at my Spotify, it's the #1 song. It's not deep, though. It's not a deep song, and I think that's like an analogy for this year. Resilience doesn't take any brains. You just have to stick with it, and it's like a consistent of showing up. You don't have to think about it. I figured out that I could perform on the street. I could readapt to pushing more online, and said, listen, if I was going to be touring and doing 30 concerts. Now I'm going to be touring online and figuring out how can I get in everybody's Zoom link. How can I get into everyone's, sidewalk? How can I perform on my own sidewalk and rap about other people and enhance their moods, and be more giving. So even though I have less physically, I'm even doubling down on giving more, because I believe in like this reverse psychology that if you can continue showing up, all of a sudden they're going to appear, and we're going to have these tricks that attract people. And that's how I got here. I could have felt sorry for myself, and I haven't talked to Felix in years, and and we haven't, and then I contacted you, and there's another thing and another thing and another thing. And resilience isn't about doing a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6. That's basics. And then you stay a little bit overtime, and also maybe you show up a little bit before 9, maybe 8:30. And I think when you start having that mentality, that's when like the real miracles happen for small businesses, and the real miracles happen for workers, that like they stick to their guns and they even do a little bit extra, but that little extra hour is going to be the 1 hour that gives you 10 times the reward, even in a pandemic. So ironically, this pandemic hasn't been as tough for me because I was already sort of built for it, because artists consistently live in a pandemic where their tours get canceled and things get canceled all the time, because our business is always filled with cancellations and no explanations. Someone says, hey, I have $2,000 for you, and then they just vanish into thin air. And this doesn't exist in other platforms or businesses. They say, Felix, I can't wait to talk to you, and we're going to send you the payment tomorrow, and then they just bleak into thin air, and the people that were going to help you, this is sort of normal for us. So when we speak of resilience, like even today, there's something called Bandcamp Friday, where on Bandcamp, and I'll shoot you guys the link, all the money goes to the artists. Some of these people champion the artists. You could see Spotify, all these places are taking more and more away from us. Doesn't mean they're bad, but it's up to us, because we chose this life, of how I tell you my story. So I have to, by all means, continue to tell my story by any medium. And if there's a new app that comes out tomorrow, I have to figure out that app and tell you my story on that app too. And if you don't know who I am, it's not your fault, it's my fault. So I take full responsibility. And when you take full responsibility, it's amazing. It's just so amazing. Like the experience in your life, it's going to drastically change. And I think that applies from art to everything else in relationships in your life. So I'm fully responsible.
Wow. I don't know what to say then. Thank you. Thank you for showing up here, and thank you for sending me that text late at night, saying I'm back in New York City. Because I feel like, when I met you the first time, I was so inspired and delighted, and I'm even more inspired today, years later, meeting you again and just being part of your journey. And I encourage you all to follow Kosha all across the web, to sign up for his newsletter, go over to his Spotify. You can just keep listening to the songs. They're all different. They change a lot. They are, as Kosha just said, they cross genres and languages. So here's to an amazing artist. Thank you so very much, Kosha Dillz. Applause.
Yes.
And Kosha, you said adapt and serve the moment, but especially you said show up and take responsibility. And so many of you did, and I'm so grateful that we might see a very bright light at the end of this tunnel. Now, I just want to hear some more art. I just want to get. I wonder if Kosha and Eleno and Dario can perform, but over Zoom, we're not gonna risk that, because the latency is gonna kill it. So I will give the mic back to Eleno and Dario. Say thank you all for voting. Thank you all for coming together, for taking this hour together, and thanks and a huge cheers to our guest Kosha Dillz.